So, as you know, I've been talking a lot about disabilities lately, and there's a reason for that. For a channel that's dedicated to learning and a channel that's dedicated to teaching and L&D and all, um, why do I focus on disabilities? Um, Disabilities create challenges, and this all stems down to your cognitive load. So, what do mean by cognitive load? So, on average, any given person at any given time can process up around 7 different things at once. I mean, this is kind of where the brain limits. Sometimes, plus or minus 2, it can be 5, it can be 9, but it's usually around 7. And those 7 things can take up a lot of your processing power. Think about it this way. You are going into work and you're driving, right? Because you have to work in person. And during that drive, someone cuts you off, right? And then you get a text from your significant other saying, hey, this is what I want to do for dinner. And you don't like that. And so now you're thinking, oh, great. How do I let him know while I'm driving to take care of this? And then it starts raining or it starts snowing or, the wind starts blowing hard and you start feeling the car move. That's 3 things right there that's taking up your processing power, right? Not a big deal because you can handle all those things and still listen to your favorite radio song and, or maybe listen to your audiobooks and still engage and still learn something. Okay, but those things kind of linger because they're things that can linger, right? Road rage is something that kind of sticks around, dealing with your significant other wanting to eat stuff that you don't want to eat, and then the challenges of thinking, great, how am I going to get home in that inclement weather? And then you go into a classroom. You go into the classroom, and for whatever reason, your computer's not working. Great. What am I going to do now? So now you got to figure that out, and that takes up some time. And then all of a sudden, the monitor's not connected, or it's giving some weird signals, or you get some weird coloring, and now you got to figure that out. By this time, you are moving into the 5 point range, right? 5 different things that you've got to process. And then the instructor starts saying, okay, we're going to start learning about the effects of AI as we migrate from Python. And your brain just shuts down because all this other stuff has taken up your ability to process. Okay, so now as an instructor, let's say you realize that people are bringing baggage into your classroom. You know this is going to happen. You know that classroom computer stuff is going to start breaking. So what you do is you take your very, very complex content and then you start breaking it down into really tiny chunks. And when I say breaking it down, I don't say you teach like 3 or 4 paragraphs and then you sit back and you let them do a lab and you can do another few paragraphs and do a lab or anything like that. I mean that as you're teaching, you pause. You wait for them to process what you've said. And then you move on again, right? So instead of just shotgunning everything at them, it takes a little bit longer to get through what you're trying to teach, but you stop and you let them process what it is you're trying to say. And that pause allows them to move what you've said from short-term memory, which will be about 25%. I mean, people remember about 25% of any given lecture in their short-term memory. That's the reality of learning, and this is how our brains work. But it'll move it from the short-term memory, that concept, into the long-term memory. Now, you're only going to remember about 5 to 9% of what you have learned in a lecture in your long-term memory. I mean, that's just how long-term memory works, right? Isn't that interesting? That 7's a magic number in the brain. I mean, 7 is like kind of where everything sits. But you want to move as much as you can into long-term memory. As an instructor, that is your job, is to help someone remember as much as possible. So you pause. You remove barriers. You make the environment much more conducive to learning. right? Make sure the computers are all working properly. You set all that up ahead of time, and you make things fun and exciting, and you get people engaged. All this helps them move more and more information into their long-term memory because they're able to process a lot more. That's just how processing works. Okay, so when you start working with folks with disabilities, that disability affects their cognitive load, right? Whatever it is, because that is a hurdle that has to be met before they can start processing the information you need to share. Now, what's really interesting is that the same techniques that you use to help people with disabilities process information work really well with neurotypical non-disabled people, right? So people who are not deaf but are visual learners and they see words go by and they're seeing you do things, they're able to process things just as well. Those who are auditory learners hear you go through your steps, step by step, that you would do for someone who's blind, and they're able to process what you're saying, right? Those who are really, really good at reading and absorption, it's still technically auditory, but maybe they don't, for some reason, hearing it doesn't help, but reading it helps. Subtitles are really, really useful for them, just like it's very handy for someone who is hearing impaired or deaf or someone who has autism that can't stand the noise around them and so turns the volume down and they're able to read what you're saying. All of these accommodations that you make for someone who's disabled, someone who has a disability, someone who thinks differently, they help neurotypical non-disabled people, your average Joe, your average Jay. They help them. That is why you need to consider how you would approach someone with a disability, how you would change your delivery, your content, your environment in which you're teaching to better accommodate someone who is challenging your standard delivery, right? Because if you do that, everyone benefits. So hopefully this was really handy and very good information for you. If you have any questions, please put them down in the comments. I'd love to read them. And, if you like what you're seeing, go ahead and hit like and subscribe and enjoy your learning journey.